Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to Geek Fruit Retcon, where we travel back in time to a previous episode from our inglorious history on the Geek Fruit Podcast. Happy listening, you nerds.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Geek Fruit with me, Tejas, and Jishnu. Hi Jishnu.
Ahoy.
What's up, man? How's it going? It's been a week since Doctor Strange. Are your opinions on the movie still the same?
Quite.
Yeah?
Nothing. I haven't seen it again yet. You have.
I saw it again.
And?
Yeah, I mean, so I went with a different bunch of people, and like some other of my friends, again, they're not so heavily invested as we are, and that should always be the case that, you know, that's the kind of audience that they're looking for. And they thoroughly enjoyed it. Everyone seems to enjoy it because, once again, I'll just say this, that they, you know, the similarities between all the origin films are masked by the genre. And so, you know, the moment you see spectacle, you're just like, what? I don't believe it. Because, you know, it's exactly the same story as Iron Man. Just think about it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
It's exactly the same story.
And Batman. And
yeah,
a bunch of it. Like,
well, Batman still, like, I don't know what it is about Batman Begins, but maybe it was fortuitous in the fact that it came out way earlier. Just like in 2005. That was when it came out. So nobody, like, questioned it. Like, and plus, it also came with 4 or 5 other Batman films before it that were, like, you know, didn't even bother to get into the integrity of the character and everything.
Right.
Except for Batman Forever, the best movie ever. And so, yeah, it just, you know, maybe that just came at the right time. Now, you know, I was just telling somebody yesterday also. I was like, it's not enough anymore, man. We have to get better than that. Yeah, so that's that.
Well, don't rain on that parade. If they enjoyed it, let them. let them enjoy it.
I know. I mean, I'll never stop anybody. I enjoyed it as well, but just, you know.
Yeah. But did any opinion change though upon second viewing? Either for the better or for the worse?
My only thing was I just liked everything that I liked about it. I just liked even more. I think Tilda Swinton she nailed it, man. She just really killed it.
Was there anything negative the first time that you sort of
the only thing was the Benjamin Bratt thing.
Yeah,
you know, the Pangborn thing. And I did some research, and, you know, I didn't find anything because he's not a character in the comics either.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Maybe, you know, Doctor Strange gives him back his powers, and he fights side by side, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't clear if he was left dead or alive, right?
No, he was just back to being paralyzed. Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
I think that is going to be... I don't think Marvel ever does anything super lightly. You know, it was a pretty low-key casting, no announcement, but he was at the premiere, he was at everything. So you never know, man, how they turn out. And the good thing is that he's the ace in the hole now, because we don't have any clue as to how he's going to behave in the next few movies.
Cool.
So that's what happened. Do we have any mail? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, cool. So should we just get to it, to this episode?
Yes, please.
We're going to be talking about Black Mirror Season 3. Now, we've done another episode on Black Mirror, so if you haven't watched it, we reviewed the first and the second series, and the Christmas special that came out previously. So go back and check that out first if you want to just get into it. But we're going to be talking mostly about Season 3, how it's changed from Series 1 and 2, and what's good about it and what's bad. So, like, let's just get into it, man.
Friggin' brilliant.
Yeah.
Friggin'
it was great.
Oh, my days.
It was bigger, I feel.
Of course.
Much bigger.
I was very, very curious to see what would become of his, I guess, integrity to just the narrative once he had Netflix backing him up. Because when it started on BBC, it was BBC? Or Channel 4?
Channel 4,
yeah, it was Channel 4. Yeah. When it started with Season 1, it was such a out-of-the-blue kind of one-off thing that was a really cool idea, because there aren't too many, at least at the time, there were definitely not very many shows that were doing...
There's no Twilight Zone anymore, so...
There weren't many shows at the time that did the whole isolated episodic thing where there was like little to no continuity between them. Actually, pretty much no continuity. There's no relation. Maybe eventually in Season 7 he'll reveal everybody's interconnected in some multiverse.
I mean, the only thing was in
the
last episode, the Christmas special, they kind of have references to the previous ones.
They do, which is nice to see, but it's not like anything that drives a narrative or a plot device or anything like that.
Purely Easter eggy.
Yeah, so... It was. I think that's why it made such a big impact, because it sort of came out of nowhere, and like it seemed like a complete word of mouth kind of thing. Charlie Brooker had a name for himself already a little bit, but it wasn't. The concept was not anything that people were really too aware of going into it, right? So that's why it sort of sideswiped everybody, and that sort of really helped.
News wiped, because that's the name of it.
It really helped establish it. So with this one, just to begin with the very first episode with Nosedive.
Or should I just... I have a list of the episodes and what will kill you in each one.
Okay.
I decided that's probably the best way to go about it. So in 6 episodes, here's what technology is going to do to kill you. One is social media ranking. The second is augmented reality. The third is spyware. The fourth is VR. The fifth is conditioning. And the last is hate speech through forum-based websites.
Through Twitter.
These are the things that are going to kill you. I've said VR for the fourth one, but obviously we know that one turns out slightly different from the other 5. I'd say that's the one that kind of is the odd one out. Because for the simple virtue of just being a slightly positive episode. I mean, like, it was a heartwarming one.
It wrecked me.
Yeah.
That episode wrecked me. But I think the 2 big things basically that he stuck with this time around was social media and VR. I think that was like his biggest sort of like using the internet to communicate with other people and technology to augment your reality.
Yeah, he's done it before in entire history of you. It's the same kind of technology that and in White Christmas also, the last one. The same technology that we are implanted with something.
Right. He's always like held that as like his main engine,
his main driving force. That's what he's most paranoid about.
His main driving force. Yeah. So what I was getting at is that I think with the very first episode with Nosedive, I think the idea to begin with social media as the very first one and this whole likability factor and all that whatnot, I think is a very calculated and a good move as the very first episode because, like I said, very curious to see what he would do once he's got the money and the name and the brand recognition with him of Netflix. Throughout the entire thing, and especially in this opening episode, he used the budget of having the ability to create anything with a really good VFX team behind him. He used that really, really well because it wasn't like overkill at any point in time. He's never been one for like doing anything over the top. Yeah. He only does like small isolated things when you really need it. Playtest is probably the one that had the most amount VFX, of nonsense going onto it. And again, those were like select few moments, very well chosen out, like when the spider with a face on it and things like that. That was like creepy stuff. But it's all of like 30 seconds. So I think that I really enjoyed Nosedive just all across the board. It was the weirdest viewing experience though, because for whatever reason I was really distracted while I was watching it, and I hated that was the case, because for the rest of them, lights off, headphones on, glued in, because I think you were crying to me earlier about like how it's incredibly draining.
It is
watching
this
show.
It's depressing and
it's very
sad,
depressing and it's true.
Hard,
and so I wanted to give the show its due time that way. And so when I watched this, I actually ended up watching it in like 3 parts, and that really bugged me because I just lost momentum with it. But within seconds, every time that I got back into it, I was I was completely there. I was like, and I love that he's got this short film format going with like as few characters as possible.
Think about this, the casts are so minimal, they don't spend on like super big names. I know Bryce Dallas Howard is there in the first episode, and she's done a fantastic job, and I think it's Alice Eve also who's playing the contrasted version of her. And just between, honestly, it's actually just her. The whole episode and her facial expressions and everything, it was just, apart from that, I feel like the most of the budget went in this first episode. Like, I'd say, because, they're creating this kind of universe. Everything's like these pastel-y colors, and, it's very minimal. Everything is very prim and proper. And I believe that's only the place where she's trying to stay, or currently stays, when she starts. So the whole episode's about rating.
With her brother.
And she stays with her brother, and you rank literally everything that everybody does. And because of that, because of your social standing, it determines what kind of social strata you also inhabit. And because of that, the places that she is in majority of the film, of the episode, is like proper, it's perfect. I love little touches like, where you go, where she was trying to buy this house and she stands in front of the billboard, and the billboard has a technology to kind of project yourself in that. That was brilliant. Really interesting. And I'm surprised, like a lot of these things, and this is what Charlie Brooker says himself, he's like, we're about 10 minutes away from it if we are clumsy.
Right. What I loved about this episode is that I thought it was arguably the most likely scenario of the 6 of them, or at least I guess the first one to happen of the 6 scenarios that he's painted.
It's already happening.
Exactly. It already exists. It's just like the moment where she's in the airport and like she gets reprimanded and she gets put onto like what's a double damage or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Like that, I love the fact that he uses double damage and sort of shaming as a negation tactic. Like there's no physical force required. Even though like the police guy is a big authoritative figure, he just has to like dock you points. And that's it. It's like social value is exactly. I mean, that is what we.
That's so.
It is the world we live in.
Yeah, it's so much more scarier for her than for actually being incarcerated or anything. Because at the end, she's like, okay, the end of the episode when she's finally incarcerated, she's in jail.
She kind of finds peace.
It's real peace, right?
Yeah.
But like before that, it's just like, oh my god, it's like, and you know how it is, man. We both live in Bombay, and we both, are on social media. We're very active, and we see how a lot of things occur, like, apart from like Tinder. I'm just saying Facebook itself. No, Tinder is like the rating app, right? But it started with Hot or Not and now it's on Tinder. But, I mean, on Facebook, somebody puts up a status that nobody likes. You're dead, man. You're like screwed, okay? So, I mean, we've seen countless examples of this and we've discussed them on our own, like, WhatsApp groups or whatever. Because that's how much, that's entertainment, it's social standing, it's everything. And the other thing is that we've also seen counts of public shaming also happening on Facebook and Twitter and saying, oh, this guy's a C. We need to bring this guy down. And it works. Sometimes it's all for the benefit. Obviously, Charlie Brooker takes the negative point of view because we have to be that prepared. I feel like he's not trying to show us, and obviously from the title of the show Black Mirror, it's just to show us the most exaggerated version of what it could be, just so that, and you can't watch the show saying, no man, that'll never happen, but I mean, it won't happen to that extent. It won't look like that. We won't be those kind of people in plastic, all dressed, all that stuff, but we're just gonna live through it without even knowing.
Yeah, I think our world is not going to be in full pastel colors. Yeah. But what we will do, which is what we're already doing, which is why I think this works so well, because it's just one step beyond reality. It's not really that far. Is the fact that we aren't honest with each other face to face. Yeah. Because our it's not even anonymity. Even when you do know who's posting it, the fact that you're writing in a digital space and like there's no face to face confrontation there. Yeah. You are a different person. It's a completely different thing, right? Like
what Louis C.K. said. He's like, kids today, when you, in this one kind of bit he did on Conan or something, and he was just like, kids, they don't understand the thing about seeing somebody's face when you say something mean, because that's how they learn stuff. It's like when you go to some other kid and you say you're fat or you're something, and then you see that person's face like scrunch up and start crying, then you're like, wow, I feel bad inside. Right. But like on the phone, you're just like, yeah, you suck. Yeah. And that's it. Like you don't see the effect of it. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, overall, I definitely thought this was definitely one of the better episodes from the whole season overall. And I mean, Bryce Dallas Howard, man, I think she's kind of underrated. Or there's something going on there, because like this running joke that she looks exactly like Jessica Chastain. I don't know if you've seen that, right?
I know that.
So and she was in Jurassic World. She's in the #1 movie, and she's doing well. Yeah, she's doing. But I don't know, like I don't think I've ever seen her chops. Even Lady in the Water wasn't the best. But she's excellent, man. Yeah. This episode, that's it. I'm convinced she's great, friggin' great actor.
Speaking of, so the one thing I realized after watching this season is that everybody in a Black Mirror episode, all the central characters, at some point or the other, more often than just once in their episode, has to perfect their holy crap, I'm scared shitless look. Yeah. Everybody has to have several moments of sheer panic. Yeah. If you want to be in a Charlie Brooker show, you need to know how to look scared. Black Mirror, you have to look scared shitless.
Yeah, and that's the scariest thing about this show, right? Is that they all start so nice, so happy, so great. And because if you're familiar with the show, it's going to go only downhill from here. Yeah. And that is so, that depresses me before. It's not like, this is the kind of film. It's not like, I know that one episode might be good, one was Flash or something like that. But this is you're in for some trouble.
Because normally a dystopian narrative, take for example the Mad Max movie. Any movie that begins with a dystopia starts gloomy, and then it's usually about one sole person that can rise above it.
Exactly.
And
there's always a trend
I will champion this and fix the problem, or try to fix it or do something. Yeah. And this is always yay, look at how amazing life is in the future because we have things that we can do stuff with, and then it's all horrible crap because we are horrible people.
So this one though, still has a kind of a weirdly satirical but like happy ending, like in the fact that she does go to jail. I mean, she has that insane speech that she's basically trying to get to her friend's wedding, where she, if she gives a good maid of honor speech, she's going to get like ranked like way higher by higher people in the social strata. So she would get like higher points automatically, and then she can get her house. So that's all she really wants. And so finally it just goes awry. She ends up like having to gate crash it and so she gets there, she did the phenomenal speech. I was thinking at that point of time that I was like, is this Charlie Brooker, one of his tools is this enigmatic speech that was happening in the episode. Even in 15 Million Merits, we have that little speech which comes at the end. So we're basically a character who is pretending to be something or trying to achieve something finally breaks down and sees the reality of all of it. I felt that had a lot of semblance with the 15 Million Merits episode, where there's this one speech where she's being like sarcastically honest, and it's great, and I love that, and that was her highlight. She's like scared me, it was that good.
What I find really amusing about that though is that she doesn't actually commit any crime.
Yeah.
And that seems valid to me, the fact that if this is the kind of world where you live in, where you can rate people so flippantly, and that is what you base everything off of in terms of like your ability to buy and sell things, and like your value monetarily is also directly correlated to your social value. That seemed to make a lot of sense to me, just because that is the world we do live in at the moment. Like you can't get past the velvet rope if you're not cool enough.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
At the moment, there are very, very few select situations that applies. But if we continue down this trend, then that can easily
everything is that, man.
expand.
Ola Select, the Tinder Plus, all these things, man. All right, cool. So anyway, it just ends with her basically going to jail and meeting somebody else, and finally, for the first time ever, probably speaking her mind without having to care about her social standing. So that was a great episode. I really liked. I liked everything. Directed by Joe Wright, also the guy who did Atonement, some of my favorite films, Soloist, bunch of movies like that. All right, cool. So that was that. We're going to take a short break and come back and now talk about the rest of the entire season.
Long, long ago, not in Bethlehem, but in a place nearby, there was a wonderful birth of a huge show, which I like to call Cyrus Says. A show that encapsulates everything in human history, from the first Homo sapien to the last Homo sapien, who's traversed the entire world and then come back to India. This is a show which tells you everything about everything. If you want to know, avoid Google, come to us. It's called Cyrus Says. Get new episodes every Monday on the IVM podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts on. You get one banana water free with every podcast. Right. I'll just check that.
Cool, so we're talking about Black Mirror. We've literally just talked about one episode, but there are 5 excellent ones that follow. Second one is, which I've listed as things which will kill you by technology, is augmented reality. And also,
So this episode and the one right after that, Playtest and Shut Up and Dance, were both, I thought, safer in that they weren't as heady.
I don't think they were very
they weren't meant to they weren't very like stimulating in that regard.
Yeah.
They were very gripping.
It was
they were thrillers.
thriller.
They were just a great viewing like experience because it was like a rush and like, oh no, what's going to happen next, and yada yada.
And the character, the guy, the main dude,
he was
great actor, right?
Amazing actor,
good actor,
such a great guy.
Who is this guy?
It was a really well done story.
Yeah.
But I am certain that I'm gonna forget about it in about a week, and I will. Yeah. Not to say that there weren't episodes like that in the previous 2 seasons, but this was not one that will stick with me.
Again, this was, like I said, it just seemed like a fear factor kind of thing. Oh, this is what AR can do, and if you toy with it, you're screwed.
Right, because the thing is absolutely. I don't think it's so much that the antagonist is the AR. The antagonist is the people controlling the AR, right?
Yeah.
And normally what scares me the most about his shows, his episodes, which I love, is the fact that he incites fear of the thing we've created rather than the people behind it, because it's just like, you've built this web and now we can't get out of it, right? In this case, it's this... what's the name of the company again?
Oh, gosh.
I forget.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember.
But that's
anyway,
your point.
The point is that these guys who are behind the gaming company are sadistic and they don't really care about the fact that like, oh, we lost another one. All right, move on, get another subject in. So it's just like, all right, fine, that guy's an evil
Having
prick.
said that, though, I mean, so the episode is about this dude who's traveling around the world. This is his last stop. He has issues with his parents, and basically he needs to find some work, and he goes and signs up for this test, which is a virtual or augmented reality test. And he goes and visits them. And my thing was that it kind of reaches. So you see his entire thing. You know, a lot of very cleverly written out mentions early on the episode that kind of play out into his memories later on. So basically, the whole scenario where he enters this house from a game that he played as a kid is kind of notable, because ultimately the final thing that happens is that he's just been stuck in this entire augmented reality or this virtual reality world for like less than a second, and everything that has transpired within that. So is it that they were just really sadistic, or in his own mind that's what they kind of created? Because he also is visited by his, that friend of his.
Absolutely. I totally get where you're coming from, but I think that they are sadistic just simply because of the very final few frames,
of course,
when the body bag is being taken out, and all they do is just like, all right, file it under like, he survived for like 0.04 seconds and just get the next guy in. Like there was like some shock and awe in there, like, holy crap, another one died, oh no, but they weren't going to stop anytime soon. Like
on to the next.
There didn't seem to be any consequences for the company for having just killed this man. So it was just like, well, these guys are pricks. And he had a really scary trip, and that's about
advertising on the UK equivalent of like Craigslist or something.
Yeah.
So it was.
So it's just like, be scared of the evil corporation.
Well, actually, the real moral of the story is call your mother, which it's so weird. Like even like after I watched that episode, I was like, and my mother called. I was like, oh shit, I should probably pick up. He's like, just call your mother, man. That's the moral of the episode. But yeah, man, I found it. I think there was a bit of a story there, which they could have fleshed out with, his whole parents thing and, ignoring that. But it didn't work its way into the crux of the story, which is that, VR is terrible. And things like that. So, overall, the guy was a great actor.
I can't say it was a bad episode. The problem is that I just hold this show to a much higher standard now. Like, he's kind of like put himself in his own hole, in that, like, the episodes that are, like, amazing are really transcendent.
Yeah, that's true.
And then when...
transcend is the right word.
And when this episode did not keep up with the caliber, I was like, well,
it's like
9 out of 10.
It's like
that sucks, doesn't it?
It's like a good one-down episode, though. Like, you have to kind of... it's not possible he's going to make a magnum opus every episode. But, like, the second one was scary. It does what Charlie Brooker does best, which is kind of scare you into thinking the future is terrible. So, that was that. That was called Playtest. The next episode was probably the weakest one for me.
Yeah, likewise.
Which was called Shut Up and Dance.
Yeah.
Simple idea that kind of plagues people's minds today also, which is that surveillance, like people are watching us and they're seeing what we do in the privacy of our own homes. And the one thing, so there's a principal character who's a kid. He's viewed to be masturbating to like something, you don't know what, but they threaten him with that video which they've recorded of him and say that if you don't follow our instructions, we're gonna leak it. And so he finds himself trapped in a web of other people who are also similarly in the same situation. And it comes down to where I really didn't think it was going to come to that, but basically it ends with a basically a fight to the death with another person for somebody else's pleasure who's watching it on a drone. So, for me, until that moment where he meets the guy at the end and he says, I'm going to fight you and all that stuff, he's like, so what were you looking at? He's like, were you looking at kids? Is that what he was like? He's probably talking about kiddie porn is like what they were talking about. So that was not made clear in the whole thing. Because he seemed to be a kid himself.
He fights a pedophile. The guy who he meets at the end is a pedophile, and that's what his cross to bear.
Right.
And the kid himself, I thought the entire time was watching just like regular porn.
And that was the whole point for me. I was just like, oh, young kids can be, manipulated into thinking that this is the end of their life as you know it. And it very well could be because of social media, etc. That ghost is going to haunt you forever. But, towards the end, like, they reveal that, because I think we find out through the phone call from his mother, where she says, how could you do that? It was children, yada, yada, yada. We get very little exposition into that. And so, and he's arrested, his life is over pretty much. That's the end of the episode. So, for me, it just felt felt like it was great seeing Braun.
It was amazing seeing Braun.
Braun was probably the best thing in the whole episode because he was being Braun in that also. It's like Braun in the real world.
Yeah. So Braun in a suit is a sight to see.
Like the moment the door opened, I was like, it's Braun.
But and I love that there was like a beat. The minute he opens the door, like nobody says anything. There's just like a pause because everybody that made that show knew like, guys, we have to give the audience a second to like get over the fact that like give them 5 seconds and then go on.
So that was good.
But beyond the ambiguity of like, you know, what was it that the kid was watching, was also what I didn't enjoy was that meme that they sent everybody.
The troll face.
The troll face. Yeah. I was like, okay, cool, fun, that's funny, that's cheeky, cool. And then I was like expecting something a bit more substantive to like explain why these people would go through all this effort, because it's a very elaborate plot and like,
but I think
a lot of homework was done on their part.
I feel like it's the similar problem in the first ever episode of Black Mirror, which is that guy who wants the Prime Minister to have sex with a pig.
Absolutely.
Right? It's thrills. It's like the fact that we can control people lets us do whatever we want. That was my only understanding.
Now see, the thing, the difference with the two is, again, that first episode being the very first episode of the series, I completely sympathize with it being such a gripping, like, it's talking about social issues, but it's also just an amazing thriller.
Amazing.
And that makes sense because your very first episode needs to make an impact, much like with this first season 3 episode. I thought it was like a great episode for the 3rd season opener. But with this one, we've seen that gag already. We've seen that plot device and whatnot. But with the very first opening episode of season 1, what was cool about it was that he was taking down the Prime Minister. And that's a very different thing than taking down a bunch of random people that like are doing bad things behind closed doors that aren't actually like hurting anybody in the vein that he was making this out to be. Like this kid, like for example, he's just a kid, and he was...
These are indiscretions, I mean, like of their own, you know, like their own personal, misdemeanors.
Right. I can completely understand somebody being pissed off with like a government official like the Prime Minister because like you probably did something, with some other country, some policy you made, some tax crap, some anything you've done that like affects a bunch of people. You are given the power to affect 1 million plus people.
Right.
A random kid and Braun and some other random dude are doing their own thing. He might be cheating on his wife. He might be jacking off to this and jacking off to that. But it doesn't affect anybody else. If you want to tell them off, great. If you want to discipline them, fine. The pedophile, sure.
Yeah, then I see it as justice. Like, you know, somebody's taking his own form of justice. Similarly to the last episode of this entire season, the series. So, I mean, that's the only kind of thing. But it seems like it was sadistic pleasure. That's the vibe that I got from the people who are controlling it. Because they're just taking advantage of people who have dark secrets. Maybe the guy, like Braun, sleeping with somebody else. That's his own personal choice or whatever. That's his life problem that he has to settle with his wife.
Right.
But, I mean, so it's not a... It's a crime. It's not a crime. It's like a...
Exactly. Yeah, I mean...
how do I put it? It's a misdemeanor. That's what it is.
Okay, I think...
You can't be charged for it.
Basically what I'm getting at is we don't know a thing about the villain in that story.
But that's the point, though.
And so the villain is just like... just imagine if it was like any of our bazillion superhero things we watch. If you just saw a villain that was like uber powerful and had no agenda other than like, I'm just going to make life hard for the superhero and, you know, beat him up and kill his girlfriend and like hold people hostage and cause havoc.
I'm trying to think which movie this is.
But you don't know.
Dark Knight. Sorry,
and you don't know the first thing about the villain. Then it's kind of like, well, why should I care about you?
But the Dark Knight is that.
He has a lot of exposition.
He has great exposition. We know why he's doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
anarchy.
Anarchy
in the UK.
He explains himself. This was just like,
so this was again not my favorite because because you know the story is like a trail, like you're following something. So I expected it to be a bigger ending, but it didn't live up to it. So that was I think that was the weakest episode.
Yeah, it was.
The next one is the one that you said, Wrecked You, San Junipero. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
So to begin with, before we even get to like the actual content, like visually,
oh my gosh, this was a standout episode.
Perfection. It had this Blade Runner meets Blade Runner
80s,
Blade Runner
vibe.
meets a John Hughes movie. Like everything about it, from like just the way they were dressed in that whole 80s space. Like I was just like expecting to see like Emilio Estevez at any point just like walk up. That would have been amazing. But yeah, so visually stunning, absolutely stunning, beautifully done, and I love just the the pace at which things were revealed.
Yeah,
because
very true.
normally he's been revealing stuff only at the very end, and then, like, he establishes a status quo for the dystopia that we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
You figure out the rules within the first 10 minutes, and then it's like, all right, now let's just focus on the one guy or the couple or the three of them and their story, the strife that they go through. And then at the very end, you're like, oh, it was actually all in the guy's head the whole time. Oh, you know, something like that. But in this one, that moment happened like 2 or 3 times throughout the thing. So it was a very like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Yeah.
And the like I don't think you could ever guess like
I still don't know like the exact rules of the game, like of how it was being worked out. I mean, like there's a few.
What don't you get?
No, so as in like I know towards the end the whole Passover thing.
Yeah.
So basically, I don't know how many. They didn't go into how many minutes a day is equal to how much time in that thing is, or like how much time they said they get once a week or something. So they were like, again, these are not details that were really necessary. And you're right. You know, the way things were revealed were not like an outright like thing saying, "Hey, man, this is what's happening. Why can't you just take me into this machine and let me find you?" It was never said that way. It was just like, like somebody says, the Emilio Estevez character says, "Hey, I think she's been hanging around in 2010, 2006, something like that." And the cuts just happen themselves where she's just transitioned into a new era and she's looking for this person who she's in love with. And it just unfolds like it was
arguably one of the best examples of the show don't tell.
Yeah, so true. Very
they didn't tell you a thing.
Yeah,
it was, you just have to like keep watching it and you will figure it out. And he doesn't explain a thing. You just have to like he gave the audience all that due credit and was just like, here's a story. These people are going to talk like they know exactly what's going on. And they don't have to like.
You're not in the story. You're just watching the story.
It's like when you if you were to film somebody talking to another person on a smartphone, like you wouldn't like give exposition of like, look at me talking to this device because it is electronically tethered to a satellite up in the sky that is then connected to another one of these devices. You know, so it was just so subtle.
Yeah, the other thing is that most of these have like characters who are like us, you know, who are introduced to the concept of it, like in Playtest or in Shut Up and Dance as a new character. And
this
didn't have. Even the one after this, there's a new recruit, right, who becomes a Stripe.
Yeah.
But this one is just 2 characters who are well aware of the situation they're in, which is why it doesn't require any exposition. And I thought that was great. And just, you're right, man, visually. I thought the ending was a bit of a cop-out. Like, I would have really appreciated that, you know, after the speech that she gives towards the end, you know, saying that 50 years I've spent with this dude, and that hit home, like, incredibly for me. It's like it's the whole thing of you don't understand what I've been through, and to another level, right? And she says that you don't understand what I had with my husband, even though I'm bi or whatever it is, you know, and I loved this guy. I had a kid who died, things like that, blah blah blah. But she kind of settles in the end and says, like all 30-year-olds do. That we know on Facebook are, you know, getting married and things like that. But she kind of goes with it. I wasn't exactly sure why. Maybe she wanted to. I felt like staying in San Junipero is a bit of a, I don't know if it's a good thing or it's a trap.
It's so here's how I took it.
That's what I didn't like about it.
So here's how I took it. So I mean, it definitely like resonated with me like loud and clear because like my grandmom is like just got into that age where she's, you know, really having a hard time with like dementia. Like that's just set in, right? So it's very relevant to like my life right now and what I'm very much aware of. And so the really interesting thing was that once we realized what was going on and that, you know, we get the reveal that she's an older woman and they meet each other and they have that conversation you're talking about where they fight. Yeah. So then the question is basically the girl with the redhead, what's her name?
Yorkie.
Yeah. Very interesting name. Yorkie.
I don't really remember
like the dog. Yeah.
Yeah, like the dog.
So Yorkie is basically saying she's willing to be euthanized because she wants to just maintain this dream for infinity, right? And then the argument is you should not euthanize the person and let them just die. Yeah. Because this is like a fake euthanization, right? It's like your body dies, but the soul,
consciousness is transferred into a machine.
Survives. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Being that she can't speak and can't move and she can't really express any of her own feelings that way, like she has no way to communicate with her would-be husband. The fact that her friend, again, I'm just horrible with names, Kelly, she was able to talk to her in the dream and sort of get a really well-fleshed-out argument for why she should be allowed to continue on is something that the guy in the hospital didn't get, right? I don't think that, like, her doctors or whatever could, like, speak to her, like,
No,
that
yeah, they
to
could,
any
they could,
detail.
yeah. So I
right?
mean, that's
So
the whole
it's
reason
like-
why she wants to stay. We don't know how long she's been like paralyzed
right.
in this
and
state.
so when you're looking at even today with euthanization, when you're thinking about like, do you let somebody remain a vegetable and like on a breathing machine, or do you just let them fade away
Yeah.
and put them out of their misery? You can't like communicate with them.
You can't communicate, then you can't make a decision.
Yeah.
But if you can, then I'm always like for it. Like I think obviously there's no dignity in growing old. It's
Yeah.
terrible and it's sad and it's horrible. And like two of my grandparents have gone through that.
But that's only
Yeah.
because of like physical ailment, right?
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's age, yeah.
your consciousness, if you can maintain that,
Yeah.
and if that's what's essentially triggering your brain to feel whatever it will feel,
Right.
It's sort of this machine that they've built essentially just takes place of like your limbs
Yeah.
being triggers for your brain.
Yeah, and I won't even question technically your brain also ages, so I don't know how that. They're literally taking, like you said, like the soul of a person and putting it into it, and seem to be trapped as 20-somethings in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I very much enjoyed the episode. I thought it was visually amazing. The acting was excellent. In fact, I was just like, who are these really good new actors that I've never seen before? And this excellent cast. And just, but towards the end, I was just like, it would have been very tragic for her to kind of wait for her and she doesn't show up towards the end. And it would have been very Charlie Brooker. I know everyone probably would have expected it. Maybe he just like said, all right, I'll let this one pass.
Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
into this, Sanjay. I even like looked for some more meaning. I tried to see what the meaning of junipero means. It's just like the Spanish word for the juniper tree. There's no particular characteristic. I don't understand what he was trying to say with this episode. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to hold on. It was like very much like, Eternal Sunshine. Everybody wants to kind of stay in a memory and hold on for a bit longer. But I think there's also like, there's a grace from which you die, like, I mean, like that's what we watched in Doctor Strange also, right? Death gives life meaning. And I think the fact that they continue to go on with each other was, I don't know, man, like, it was just, I felt bad. I honestly felt bad about that. But I mean, otherwise it was a fantastic episode. Yeah, there's a lot to think about. Yeah.
Kelly was just afraid of dying.
Yeah, they were
both afraid of dying. But
everyone's
then like
fear.
I can't imagine what Yorkie would have done if Kelly didn't continue with her.
Should have to find somebody else in the massive system that is revealed towards the end.
Yeah.
And it's the only one which has mid-credits like cuts,
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think Charlie Brooker's shared a playlist also from the whole episode. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, so we're going to check
Such
that out.
a fun
But yeah, man, so
soundtrack.
speaking of which, so just before we get on to the next episode, I'll just take a break and tell you there's some cool stuff that did you read about what Black Mirror did with ad blockers to get to advertise to people who have ad blockers?
No.
They basically found some backdoor, some weird way of doing it so that if we have ad blockers, it would still show you an ad saying, hey, I know you've blocked this. Remember, ads, you can't see ads, but ads can see you. Watch Black Mirror like series 3. It was crazy. And I just thought that was a bit of genius marketing, but like really cool. And just watching interviews with Charlie Brooker. He was on Newsnight in BBC, and it was just great. And he's just like, it's like I'm not trying to say anything more than what people already know that is happening. Yeah. I'm just like I'm a paranoid guy, and I talk about it. That's it. And he just does it in a freaking destruction way. Like he will destroy you, that man.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Let's move on to episode 5.
Men Against Fire.
I really loved this episode.
Yeah.
I really did, because I think it's very relatable to what's going on right now with Syria and refugees and things like that. So this is the one where basically there is a new unit of military that has been given a implant, like basically that you can see stuff in augmented reality. It's basically like having implanted Google Glass, and it helps you with your targeting, helps with your planning your attack and things like that. And ultimately later on is like the targets that they're trying to eliminate are actually being manipulated to show them as monsters. Like they look like very much like zombies or something like that. And so these guys have been conditioned into killing off these people. Now this whole episode is it's like I said, it's very relevant with refugees today. I wouldn't say like, most of his episodes have been within the reach of reality, or maybe it's kind of happening right now. But there was a really nice part where Stampo from House of Cards, who owned this episode, he was great. So he was there and he explains, there was one really good part. He's just like, did you know that in the First World War there was only like 15% of like shots or like, actual hits? I had no idea about this. People were scared. Great piece of trivia.
I have not fact checked that, but if it's true, I'm very impressed.
If it's false, I'll be even more impressed, right? That's how good it is. But the fact that like people didn't want to fire their weapons, they didn't want to kill people, and he's like, and that's a good thing because you shouldn't want to have to kill people. But then when there's an actual war going on, somebody has to do it. Like it's the same. Like my uncle was in the Kargil war, and I asked him, I was like, "Did you kill somebody?" And he's just like, "Yeah, I had to do it, man. Like that's what you are left with." And so he talks about how they have been improving conditioning for soldiers over time, and this is what we've been seeing anyway. Like the U.S. Army is getting more and more hardcore with their gear and equipment and the way they train their soldiers. This could well be the next step of like just maybe not AR to that level, but like maybe like giving them some kind of chemicals that condition, like basically make their focus like extremely narrow, and so that when you're in the field you are in to kill and that's it, and your conscience is kind of like held back or withheld and stuff like that. So the moment this soldier in the story kind of finds that out, he kind of loses his mind. He's very upset about it, and he tries to kind of save some of them, which ultimately he fails at doing. But otherwise just super hard-hitting, super like well-made episode. I really enjoyed. The main guy was great. Again, good actor. I mean, he was again in his scared shitless.
Great, great find.
He had a great scared shitless face. So yeah, I thought that was really good, and I felt bad also because, I mean, again, it's the exaggerated version of how would we even perceive refugees or or people who are just not allowed, and in this they really go like badly on them, saying, oh, these people have a broken DNA, like a worse form of the DNA. And just like, how do you say that about people? That's terrible. But I'm sure people are evaluating others every single day. I mean, like maybe it's social media, but like on a much more biological, evolutionary level. I mean, this is how we've operated throughout like our existence on the planet. Maybe this is the next way. I don't know. It's that was just something that really like hurt badly. Yeah,
I agree in that it was incredibly poignant and relevant, and so that it resonated for all those reasons, because it was obviously true. Like everything he does, pretty much is like it's grounded in something that we can't ignore, which is what makes it very compelling. But kind of the antithesis to San Junipero.
Yeah.
In the way that things were revealed and in the plot devices and whatnot. So like within the first like 15 minutes,
you can guess what's
happening. And that was just because he's dug himself into this hole of being who he is. I was like, really, you've done so much better before. Like, why is this? So that pulled me out of it.
But I guess again, this was kind of like a filler episode to the last one.
Right.
Like it I wouldn't say filler.
Not filler.
There's no fillers in this, but just one of those.
When you have 6 episodes, you can't afford a filler. But
yeah, true.
Yeah, so I guess it was just a little disappointing after seeing something as amazing as San Junipero, and San Junipero might well be my favorite episode of the entire series thus far.
I could say so as well.
And
or maybe the first episode, depends.
So first episode is great just because like I mean
everything is dead on in that episode.
It's dead on, but I also have to like take it with a grain of salt because that was like going in blind and seeing that was just,
exactly. I mean, which is why marketing like worked well for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this one was great, but comparatively, it was
not the best from the
not the best by a long shot for me, but it was a really well
and I don't know how
executed
early they started writing this, because I mean it just seemed very relevant, like perfectly timed,
I think it's I think it's relevant. It's been
has been
relevant
with
for
Palestine
like
and things like
exactly. For like decades, man.
True,
like this, you could have made this in like the 90s, and I would have been like, Gulf War, cool, same
exactly,
thing,
same
whatever.
Thing, very true.
Anywho,
last episode, final episode of the season, slightly longer episode. This was about, 75, 80 minutes?
90.
90 minutes,
on hour 29.
Okay.
What did you think? Gotta be honest?
Yeah.
No? Completely failed.
Yeah, because
it completely failed for me.
It felt like a episode of Luther or like Sherlock or something, but has a dystopian ending, and it
was just like, this is your big finale? Like, really?
But that was it was the big plot episode. I feel like there's a mystery involved, and I didn't feel like, and this, you're right. I mean, the problem is that you have to, and you have to watch every episode individually, which is why I still feel Shut Up and Dance, even by itself individually, it's just a weak week episode.
Yeah.
But because it's not, I mean, it felt like very Twilight Zone in the sense that, you know, it's just another episode. But everything else has a point to make. This one, you're right, it didn't hold up, I think, generally also, because the villain, you have to just really quantify it in terms of what is the intention to be made, or what's the point you're trying to make in these episodes. And in this one, it just felt like the villain, I mean, again, good topic, hate speech is a huge thing. In fact, just recently, just read this, and this before I read the episode, watched the episode, is that YouTube has finally, not perfected, but will never perfect, but done an update to its comment section, which is where the worst people in the world live, and it's just basically a much better algorithm to kind of to basically stop, or at least try and reduce the amount of random hate and spewing messages of whatever. And so they have just updated that. Twitter really needs to do that, so they need to kind of get on that thing. Facebook has already been working on its algorithm. So I think relevant in terms of the actual topic of it, I don't know how much I felt the angle of the bees, because it felt very M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, the bees were just random as hell. I was like, why is there
it could have been anything else. I mean, if they mentioned early in the episode that, you know, this other species of bird is now crane or something, the Siberian crane is now extinct. I was like, okay, bees are getting extinct. Why would you only repopulate bees? I mean, I know they have a very important function, but I mean, it just felt like...
So when I broke it down, it's just a matter of, there are a bunch of murders that are being committed, right? And the hits are random. There's no real connection between these people. They're just people that are not liked publicly and that people actively have expressed dislike towards.
Yeah.
So they spent 80% of this episode trying to figure out how the murders
are connected.
How the murders are connected and how the murders are happening in the first place, right? So they figure out, it's basically, just so the question is, how are these people connected? And it's a giant game of Cluedo. So what was the weapon that they used to kill the person with?
Which?
Yeah. So when they figured out with what device, or it was a candlestick? No, it was a bunch of bees. Yeah. So once they figured that out,
I didn't guess it though. To be honest.
Yeah, no, I didn't guess it. But once you find the answer to it, then the question is, why would he use a bee? Wait, what? And then the answer is not satisfying. It's just a guy that is really good at hacking into stuff. So he hacks into this bee network. Yeah. And then
he has no personal motivation, right? We don't, I mean, apart from the fact that he's related to the person, he was a roommate of that person.
Right. So tell me if you got something more out of this, because I was left very unhappy with the ending. Okay. And so he runs away to what looks like Colombia or something.
Somewhere in South America.
Somewhere in South America. And he hides out, and then Blue, the blonde lady, she goes off chasing after him.
Yeah, it's stupid. And it's silly. I gotta be honest, it's silly. Because she basically turns out...
There's no closure.
There's no closure because, in the end of this court case, which is what bookends this episode, she says,
which is months after the fact, right?
Yeah, I guess, no.
Because Blue's been gone, because she said Blue is
4 months or something. Yeah. So she's been gone for a while. I don't know why this court case is happening so late in the game. Is this India?
So 387,000 people have died.
Yeah.
Because of the bees.
Yeah, because...
Fine.
Yeah.
So this guy massacred 387,000 people. They couldn't find him.
He does, yeah.
They couldn't find him.
They couldn't find her.
They couldn't...
And he just shaves off his head and puts on contacts and he's out of there.
And he's out.
So the fact is that she kind of... so Blue fakes her own death, I suppose, to try and catch him so that she's not on the grid. And that's the only understanding I had of it. That's it. But and she sends a very unsatisfactory message saying, got him.
Yeah. No, you didn't. You have not, in fact, got him.
You were following him.
Yeah.
Which is what he... also wanted on Twitter.
Yeah.
Ironically. No, but I mean, the only, I guess, were the bees a metaphor for hive thinking?
I guess so.
That's the only kind of I was like, okay, cool, why bees?
Fine,
but sure, I guess that was it. But I mean, it was just okay, it's bees.
Especially again, just its context, man. Just after White Christmas.
Yeah.
My hopes were so high.
That was a great episode.
White Christmas is amazing. That is probably my closest
level
to the
of
San Junipero, White Christmas are without question my top two dogs. And this was just what?
It was quite a letdown.
I was watching it diligently the whole time, being like, all right, I've watched this for 80 minutes. I'm just waiting for you to give me this big, mind-blowing reveal.
It's like, you guys are also in the VR game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That would have been really crazy. But I don't know, man. I just, you're right. So I think it was a bit of a disappointment. I think the acting, again, is always on point in this show. It's well-directed. It's well-written in many ways. In fact, the first episode was written by Rashida Jones. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So she wrote the
went from
plot summary.
So she was writing Toy
Toy
Story
Story
4,
4.
and then she writes
She's
this.
the greatest. She can do anything. She's amazing. And she also directed a Sarah Bareilles video, which I was really happy with. So she's amazing. And, but yeah, just generally, the scripts are good. Like, none of it feels like I could watch it on any other show. So I'll always give Black Mirror that. It's still always a unique show in that sense that
you have to prepare yourself.
Yeah, you have to prepare yourself. The dialogues are very offbeat. It's just different. And because we're also science fiction nuts, this is exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for, and it's also relevant. It's great.
Yeah. I can put it this way. Binge watching 13 hours of Luke Cage in 48 hours was easier.
Much easier.
Emotionally and physically.
So much easier.
Than watching just 6.5 hours.
And I had to do the previous ones also. So I was like, I was out.
Yeah,
I was done.
Just watching 6 hours of Black Mirror versus 13 hours of Luke Cage will drain you twice as much than 13 hours of Luke Cage.
It's genuinely scary. Like, in fact, there was this one thing, just to close up with a bit of trivia. This is one guy who came on Shark Tank, and Shark Tank is the investment show, right? So he came on Shark Tank, and he was just, it was almost a joke, his little segment, that he came up with what was it called? I can't remember what it was called, but it's basically a little square, kind of plastic piece that you can slip onto the camera of your phone and your laptop or your webcam and everything. And that's it. He's like, that was my plan to stop surveillance problems in America. And they made fun of it, and it's true. I mean, but one of the sharks, I can't remember whom, but he was just like, yeah, this is happening. I mean, people, they can use your technology to do it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, wait, that's kind of scary. That is, I mean, we've had the celebrity iPhone leak. There's so many things that happen.
So here's the thing. I'll tell you, this is why, Shut Up
Yeah.
and Dance was probably the weakest episode for me, is because of the fact that this is a valid point, like you said, that they can do this, right?
Yeah.
Now, what Shut Up and Dance did not give us at the ending, and which is my rationale for not getting paranoid about this, when I know that I'm looking at my iPad screen right now, and that very well could be somebody looking at me. But who am I, and why would they give a damn about looking at me? Even when I am doing something horrible potentially, why would they care about me out of the 7 billion other people? And Shut Up and Dance was exactly that. There was no reason why he chose these people. There was nothing to connect them.
I agree.
Nothing that was overarchingly.
Yeah, because in that sense, everyone is a of that kind. I wanna say.
Like the celebrities' phones that got hacked. Make sense because they're really popular figures,
of
and
course.
that's why the very first opening episode of the series makes sense because he was the prime minister and you're a big public figure. So you are somebody that we can bring down because there's a lot riding on you. Right? There's a lot of responsibility that you bear, and your decisions matter and impact everybody else.
And to take you down would mean something.
And with a celebrity, while your decisions don't mean much, people are invested in you. People care about you. People love you for various reasons. So with me, I'm nobody. So I don't feel scared because I don't think I'm threatening to anybody or I have enough value that anybody would take the time to hack into my systems. And
the only thing is that for that, I mean, the only way I can see it is that people who are not of, so to speak, importance, like you and me, all right? All they are pawns, so I feel like you're a pawn, and you can be controlled because you don't have so I thought there was some relevance in the fact that he picked this kid. I thought that was important because he's a kid, and literally Facebook and Instagram and your social just how the first episode said, that's what your life is in the beginning, especially if you're in high school and stuff. Oh my god, that can be damaging, So I thought there was something in that he took a kid and threatened him with something pretty harmless, at least in the beginning, which is what I thought, and then got him to do all these things until I was just waiting for him to finally go this. I don't want to do this anymore. That's what all of us would be leak it. I don't give a damn. But it just went into some other direction that I think he just got really aggressive and it's no, everyone's just gonna die. I think that's all that happened pretty much. All right, cool. Otherwise, so you want to rank the episodes for this?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can safely tell you. So
I think both of us should be the same.
So San Junipero and Nosedive, episode 4 and 1.
Yeah, definitely that.
Followed by, for me, I'll probably say Playtest.
Okay, I would say the other one, the
Men Against Fire.
Men Against Fire. Yeah,
so I'd say Playtest, Men Against Fire.
Yeah.
Hated in the Nation and Shut Up and Dance.
Yeah, that's the right one.
And it's very telling because I think if I were to rate the ones from the previous seasons, it's clearly a divide between the ones that are narrative driven around just a person's relationship with somebody else versus
those
a thriller. His
Yeah.
thrillers are fun because all thrillers are inherently meant to grip you and oh wow, what's going to happen next and who done it and all that stuff. those are great, but they're not nearly as satisfying as, like, say, a Nosedive or Ascension Inferno, which gives you pause for thought and, like, makes you really sit and think about
real
shit.
Pondering.
Yeah, like, I can think about, I can reflect on Nosedive constantly whenever I'm liking stuff and I'm receiving stuff and be like, does this really matter? Like, how much should I actually care about the fact that I got 100 new followers? Or, you know, like, things like that. So, those ones will
definitely
stand the test of time.
I agree.
Shut Up and Dance will not
yeah.
sit with me for a long time.
Yeah. All right, cool. So if anybody has any thoughts on Black Mirror, it's a loaded kind of show. You guys should definitely watch it. If you have just come into season 3, that's also fine. Just go back, watch series 1 and 2. You can catch our previous episode, which was called Mirror's the New Black. It's on Savan exclusively, as we always are. And yeah, man, if you have any thoughts, write to us. Contact geekfruit@gmail.com. You can also find our website, www.geekfruit.in. And anything else? Find us on social media?
On all those evil social media.
Oh, yeah. Find us on the evil social. And don't hashtag...
You should follow us and like us, but know that we won't care because we know that if we care too much, we are doomed to fail.
Yeah. Make sure you don't hashtag death to Geek Fruit. That would be...
That's your own funeral.
That would work bad for you, cool. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks, Jishnu. I'll see you next week. We talk about something cool.
Okay.
All right, see you later.
If you insist.
You nerds. Now, I know the Fan Garage seems like a place which my mother fears I'll spend the rest of my adult life in, but fortunately for her, it's actually a great podcast on sports. Something else she wishes I chose instead of being a nerd. Get your daily news on all the action going on in cricket, fantasy cricket, and Indian football every day on iTunes, Stitcher, or even the IVM Podcast app.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out IVM Podcasts to get some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.